Today on Flywire, we're going to take a look at what, to me, looks like a go-around gone horribly wrong. So stick with us on Flywire. Hi, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on Flywire, we're going to look at the accident of a 1973 V-35 Bonanza in the wine country of California. Two pilots and one passenger set off from French Valley Airport in Temecula, California, about 5:50 in the morning. They flew roughly over LA on a straight line towards Angwin, California. They used flight following, and to all intents and purposes, it looked like a normal flight, the kind that Bonanzas are perfect for. The landing pattern is what we are interested in here, and it's not going to take an awful lot. It's not going to take very long to look at it. The Angwin Airport, also known as Parrott Field, is owned by the local Pacific Union College, and its identifier is 2 Oscar 3. Upon reaching Angwin, they canceled the flight following, and then they flew a left downwind for runway 16. They were a little high and a little fast, and using rapid descent, the pilot was able to get on a semblance of an overshooting final, and the radar track showed the airplane turned left to get on the center line. A landing was accomplished of sorts. Let's watch the TV news report of the crash.
It crashed in a vineyard this morning and burst into flames. The 3 people on board all died. Good evening, I'm Jana Katsuyama in for Christina Rondon.
And I'm Andre Senior. It happened just south of the Angwin Airport. This is northeast Napa, just west of Lake Berryessa. KTV's Kristen Captain was at the scene most of the day.
The wreckage of that plane is here in the vineyard right here behind me. The cause of that crash still under investigation. Investigators say the small plane crashed on approach to Angwin Airfield, a small airport in the Napa Valley. From the air, you can see the aftermath of the crash and fire. Investigators say they reported to the scene shortly after that crash at around 8:40 Friday morning.
Arrived to find a small airplane. It's a Beechcraft 35 Bonanza, fully engulfed. So CAL FIRE firefighters put the fire out.
Once that fire was out, investigators were able to determine that no one on board had survived.
At this time, I can confirm, tragically and sadly, that all 3 on board are deceased.
Investigators say vineyard workers were nearby and watched the plane go down. No one on the ground was injured. Federal investigators, the FAA and NTSB, arrived on scene after noon and began looking into possible causes of the crash and trying to determine who was the pilot of the craft and who was on board. The plane crashed on approach to Parrott Field. The airfield is part of the campus of nearby Pacific Union College. The college confirming that none on board the aircraft were associated with the campus.
One of the first things that our assistant director of the flight center did was work with everyone and make sure all of our employees and students and pilots training and aircrafts and everything were accounted for. And I can officially say that everyone on our campus is accounted for.
The college is working with federal officials, turning that information over, trying to narrow the list of potential victims. In Napa County, Christian Captain, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Witnesses said the airplane bounced several times before the pilot initiated a go-round. Witnesses also said that it appeared that the airplane cleared the first tree line and then pitched up after passing the trees. The left wing dropped and the nose then dropped towards the ground. At that point, the witness lost sight of the airplane, and when he saw smoke, he called 911. There is security video footage from 2 Oscar 3, and unfortunately I can't show it to you. And the accident airplane appeared to lift off near the departure into runway 16. The landing gear remained deployed as the airplane flew out of camera range. So apparently the gear was down to the whole routine. The damage to the airplane couldn't quite tell from the pictures. Investigators, they did a good job of examining the accident site and capturing the important facts of the accident. They found that the first point of impact was a 50-foot tree, approximately 2,500 feet from the end of runway 16. For most GA airplanes, doing a normal takeoff, these trees would be a concern, but not a problem. The investigators found left wing skin in that tree, and on the ground a few feet away was the left aileron. The main wreckage came to rest about 450 feet further down the vineyard field. There's a bit of a hill. And the left tip tank was found about 150 feet west of the main wreckage. So between the tree line and the wreckage. The airplane came to rest on a westerly heading approximately 120 degrees from the heading when the airplane first impacted the tree. The propeller and engine separated from the fuselage, and the prop blades had markings of being under power on impact. The weather was reported as a VMC during the accident sequence. All 3 occupants were fatally injured, and this is a huge shame. Well, we do need to find out what triggers we can discover to avoid doing this in the future so others can avoid the problems that these people faced. One thing I noted was the airplane was relatively high and at cruise speed entering the downwind for runway 16. Beginning a leisurely descent rate of 640 feet per minute was soon followed by descent rates of 1,200 to 1,300 feet per minute. From my perspective, that's a bit energetic for a GE airplane in the pattern. For my preference is a more controlled 500 feet per minute descent rate, and I like to be at pattern altitude below gear speed about 5 miles out. So why was this pilot high and fast on downwind? The sectional doesn't show terrain very well right around the airport, and if you take a look at the satellite, you can plainly see that in the left downwind area there's a pretty steep drop-off that drops off into a very wide valley. It looks to me like a taller ridge southwest of the field may have impacted the pilot's decision-making as he descended into the area, because it's considerably higher than the airport elevation. The airport itself is on a bit of a plateau. This might explain why the pilot was high and fast, and the pilot could not reduce the energy state, and he ended up with an overshoot to final for runway 16, followed by a big maneuver close to the ground that was needed to line up on the runway. And the airplane, they had too much energy. Some of you may call it speed, going into the transition zone for landing. And by no means was this approach and landing attempt stabilized. I think at that point it might have been evident that a go-around was warranted. But instead, the pilot tried to force the landing on that 3,200-foot-long runway. Predictably, the airplane bounced and porpoised, leading to the pilot to elect to do a go-around at the very end. Now he was really in trouble because he was low on speed, and he was dirty, and with a serious need to climb. With the trees and the terrain growing in the windshield, it's apparent that the pilot forgot to raise the gear, and that extra drag slowed the acceleration and the climb rate and led directly to contact with that 50-foot tree and the subsequent crash of the airplane. From an impartial look at the accident, a late decision to go around led to the crash. I would suggest that there is never any shame in going around for another try. I mean, if it doesn't look right, the earlier to go around, the better. Come back around and try it again and make it right. Okay? And in this case, frankly, I would suggest that a step further back is required. Why rush the pattern and landing at all if you're high and fast? Even if someone really needs to go to the bathroom, a physiological incident is better than an airplane crash in any time. So if the airport area and the traffic pattern doesn't look right to you, or like you imagined, well then circle over to the field and plan your entry into the pattern and your approach. What's the hurry? I operate on the premise that all my patterns are the same. I do the same altitude, the same speed, the altitude above the ground. I try to turn base and final at the same points in reference to the runway. And with rare exception, I try to make every pattern look the same. If you don't fly air shows, then you probably would have a rough time estimating your speed and closure rate to the ground. I would suggest don't explore this regime of flight for the first time with passengers and an unreasonable need to land out of the first approach. Don't force it. Check it out, make a plan. Yeah, I mean, you have plenty of fuel, right? When you rush things, other important things drop out of your cross-check. Practice your go-arounds. I think it should be a methodical, step-by-step maneuver rather than a holy whatever, firewall forward everything kind of thing. Take your time and do it right. I mean, what else are you going to do? Go-arounds, no harm, no foul. Remember, this whole flying thing is supposed to be fun. So y'all be safe out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Flywire.